And so really glad to have everyone here. This is something that we've been doing for the last few weeks now. It's called the Integrated Series. We've been running it through the Avalanche header. The idea is that we want to have a really open and kind of blockchain agnostic or project agnostic conversation. I think we all have very unique experiences, especially pre-crypto, but also within the crypto space. And there's a lot of interesting topics that we could be talking about. So for today, we are generally speaking about crypto communities and how we implement these strategies to make sure that they're growing in this truly global and borderless market. And the idea is, generally speaking, how to create a community champion. So we will be focusing on that. And I think before we get going, we might quickly do a round of intros. I'll start with myself. My name is Kurahashi-Sofue. I am the VP of Marketing at Avalabs. We are building the Layer 1 solution called Avalanche and have been at the firm for about a year now. So we'll hand off the mic to Joe and then we'll go around in circles.
Hey everyone, I'm Joe Vessani. I'm the CEO of LunarCrush. We're a social listening platform for cryptocurrency, and our mission has always been to kind of create transparency around community and growth in the crypto space. And just so happy to be here with you guys talking about community and the growth of our industry. And it's going to be a pretty amazing rest of this year with what we're seeing, and this is going to be fun. So thanks for having me.
Cool. I'm Simone Pomposi. I'm the head of marketing at the Fantom Foundation. I joined around a year and a half ago, and at Fantom we're building, similarly to Avalanche, a layer 1 platform that is a, let's say, a potentially better solution than Ethereum for certain specific use cases. And we have a very, very strong community, and it's amazing to see the project grow. And so looking forward to talk to you guys about it.
Hey guys, I'm Timothea and I'm CMO of Orion. And Orion is a chain agnostic protocol on which we're building the decentralized gateway to the digital asset market. So we're creating this singular portal for traders to access not only every centralized and decentralized exchange in one place directly from their wallet, but also NFT marketplaces, stocks and commodities, etc. And as I said, we are chain agnostic and very pleased to be building on both Avalanche and Fantom. So great to be here with you guys.
Awesome, and I'll follow up. I'm Graham Friedman, the Director of Public Token Offerings at Republic. I also sit as an LP on our crypto fund and have the luxury of working with a variety of projects and supporting them as they go to launch. I guess the last factor is we do have a token, so I do kind of fit in with this crowd in that regard. A security token, though, however, so slightly different in how we can use it, and I'd definitely be curious to explore the differences in what we're capable of doing with our various assets.
Awesome. And we'll hand off the mic to Joe and just kick off the conversation generally, see where it takes us.
Yeah, man, I'll play a little moderator here. And the way I wanted to start, which is always fun, is to a couple of icebreakers. But first question, and Jay, we can start and we can kind of go in a circle. But so what brand or brands are most memorable to you from your childhood? And looking back now, what made them so impactful to you now that you're a professional in the industry?
Oh man, I think that's a very interesting icebreaker.
No one's prepared for any of these questions, you guys. These are all they gotta shoot from the cuff here.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. Honestly, I guess so you're saying, just to clarify, as a perspective from as a child and how.
Yeah, like what is there any? Are there any brands from when you were younger and you love them and kind of thinking about that? You know why do you think it was so impactful to you when you were little? Looking back now, knowing more about marketing and brands.
Yeah, so I think one of the ones that actually immediately comes to mind, and maybe because I have a little bit of a bias within the crypto space now, but was I don't even know if that's technically a brand, but Beanie Babies. I think they were
Yes.
just such a big item for me. And I also, one kind of fact that maybe people don't know in the professional world is I have a twin sister. So, and she's not in crypto, just for the clarification. But I think the reason why it resonated so much was because it was simple and clean and really was what it was. I think it was very utilitarian. Or I guess not really, but for a kid it was. And it's basically just these collectibles. For those that don't know, they were essentially these stuffed animal dolls. They had these tags on them, which gave them some sort of seal of approval. So a lot of the times, actually, the conversation right now is, especially within crypto, you have people talk about how similar the NFT market has been to these types of niche collectibles like Beanie Babies. And imagine if there was a way to verify that in some sort of immutable ledger, whereas in the past, the way you just collected it was you had to make sure that the tag stayed on fully intact. So you had even like protective cases to make sure that the tag stayed on intact. And then you also, I guess, kind of just had to trust that the item that you were buying was truly verifiable. And I think the brand really resonated because it just said TY. I don't even know what that stands for, but it was just memorable for a child. And that's what I would say is kind of like the childhood brand for me.
That was
I love
great
it.
answer.
Yeah, I don't know. Wait, I guess quick question in the group, who had Beanie Babies in this group?
Oh, I definitely
did
have
it?
Beanie Babies.
Who did
I
it?
probably have some in storage somewhere still, so
Yeah, okay,
could make some money off those.
Yeah.
So I just read that the TY. So Beanie Babies are a line of stuffed toys created by American businessman H. Ty Warner. So that's what the TY is. All
Wow,
right,
yeah, so I
Simone.
didn't even know that.
Simone, tell us what brand or brands are most memorable to you from your childhood, and looking back now, what do you think made it so impactful?
Okay, this is a fun question, and I will answer with a very easy answer, which is Coca-Cola. and it's funny. It's really literally the first brand that came to my mind from my childhood. And I think so. First thing, I grew up in Italy. I moved to the US about 10 years ago. And so Beanie Babies, I had no idea. We didn't have them back in Italy. But so why Coca-Cola? Because there were always these very nice and warm commercials going on in the TV, and then of course you would see, Coca-Cola trucks in the streets, and also it was this thing that again in Italy, Italy it's all about good food and drinking water and wine, and Coca-Cola for us was this American thing, and like every other American thing, it was this um, special item, I want to say. And so yeah, I would say there was that. There was something. There was special because it wasn't coming from Italy, and it was cool for that reason. But also the commercials and the message that they were sending, it was a very warm message, as I said before. And I have in mind this sort of frames of commercials of people getting together and being happy and smiling. And so now, how does it relate to now? I would say, of course, those are all huge values that are important in the community. And but even more so, I always ask myself, okay, why does Coca-Cola still spend billions of dollars a year in marketing? And the answer is simple. Basically, they need to stay relevant, because it doesn't matter how well known they are. If they don't stay relevant, the new better Coca-Cola, the Pepsi, or whatever, can just replace them. So somehow they still have to, always carve their space in everyone's mind.
Thank you.
tough answers to follow there. I think I'm going to have to go with the Livestrong bracelets. And I think from my perspective, not only did they change the face of charity marketing, I remember in school, they used to cost a dollar, right? But people were paying up to like $3, $4, $5 just to get their hands on them. So these pieces of plastic with no real inherent value are being marked up significantly because people are so obsessed with getting their hands on them. And I feel like, there's a lot to be learnt there in how to create or arbitrary value on something that for something that doesn't have a true inherent value without that. So I feel like that has to be the one that sticks in my mind most there.
Yeah, those Livestrongs were great because it was really more about the social value that you got from them, right? Yeah.
Exactly. You couldn't turn up to school without one of those.
Exactly. I think if you're wrapped up, for me it would be creepy crawlers, which were the easy bake oven pivot to the sort of the male spectrum, where you could bake all of those funky creatures. For me, it was very sensorial and has tons of just sense memories attached to it, from like the smell, from the song. I honestly, the second you asked that question, I just heard tons of different advertisements from like late 80s, early 90s. Most of them had electric guitar tracks. And it was like, if they played heavy metal electric guitar, that was like my jam. There we go.
I love it. I mean, it's and thank you guys for answering that. And it's it's kind of cool to hear that, whether it's the Beanie Babies or the Livestrong bracelets, it's like there was a secondary market for those, and people trading, and secondary markets are only created when things are unique and they're so valuable that the distribution is difficult and you can't get your hands on it, so someone's willing to pay more because like their parents might have taken them there to get one, or they live near something. And thinking about how that translates into our market is interesting. And then with Coca-Cola and creepy crawlers, like you were saying, Graham, like the sensory, the smell, the song. And then for Coca-Cola, it's like this emotion and this kind of aspiration and kind of creating that brand. And these are the things that have stuck with people. And it's the combination of all of these things in our market, it seems to be happening, is this kind of like perfect storm. And so to keep things fun a little bit, I wanted to ask everyone, we'll kind of more recent type stuff, but what was the most ridiculous campaign that in your career that you've seen firsthand? So I want to hear something like, ridiculous can mean failure, massive success, or just downright odd. Like I want to hear a story where someone was like winding up to hit a grand slam, but like the bat ended up in the bleachers or something. Like what is kind of like a, where did marketing go wrong? We can go in the same order unless someone's got something that, like you said, that sticks out in their head and they want to go first.
I think a recent one that just popped into my head is the Pepsi Kendall Jenner
Super Bowl ad.
Well, no, I think it was it played at the Super Bowl? Yeah, where she walks up to a Black Lives Matter standoff between protesters and police and offers a police officer a can of Pepsi. I think it was. Does anyone remember that one?
Yeah, that was the one that the in-house team made, I think.
Right.
Correct. It was their first go.
Yeah, it was exactly.
No.
Not trying to like say that was the reason, but it wasn't necessarily good timing.
Yeah, I think the timing was a little off on that one and very tone deaf.
Yeah, actually, that one was pretty big in the industry because, as Jay mentioned, it was the first time that the brand tried to handle their own creative. And, usually the process goes shopping it around, getting a couple different ideas, having that feedback bounce off. And that was definitely supposed to be the grand opening of this concept of the brands owning their own creative to that effect. And that's what we got.
Yeah, I think it was even parodied on SNL, wasn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Which is probably doubling your ROI in a certain way.
So
I remember years ago when Snapchat was coming up. I did camera work for commercials, so had quite a few of like interesting campaigns along the time. But it was working with Doug the Pug, a famous pug influencer, who we paid quite well to show up that day. But everything about it was supposed to be shot on Snapchat, which does a lot of automatic adjustments, making like a very bright white environment hard to maintain because it tries to lower the exposure. Anyway, it was very funny. I just remember things sort of going wrong and working with this dog, and it was amazing. But one other one, and I'll not take up too much time. I'll let everybody else speak. But I was once working with the Impractical Jokers, and I think this was actually an amazing learning experience. How they took a sort of a problem and they turned it into something great. And I worked for a streaming company back in, I want to say 2008. And what we would do is take a lot of television shows, and after their season finale would wrap, we would immediately go to the internet, and there could be some sort of user feedback. We would either do Q&A sessions or all sorts of different ideas. But the Impractical Jokers had wrapped their season, so we were going live to the studio, and all of this high level pitching was involved, and we had their head producer there who had brought his wife and his kids to watch everything. But I don't think our back end was scaled up enough to support the amount of interest that we got. So slowly but surely, we're doing this stream, and Amazon web servers start to get, they start to shut down, and our bandwidth is overwhelmed. And the first thing to go down is the audio, and it starts being a little funky. And I could tell there was something wrong. So they were amazing, though, in the way that they handled it, started to pivot immediately to writing very large, easy to digest messages / jokes on cards, and start doing the entire thing without any sound. And of course, it eventually got to the point where the whole thing broke, and they turned around and went on the internet and said, "Hey, we broke the internet," and tried to turn this bug into a feature. And it was just one of those moments where it was really amazing to watch professionals take what should have been a huge embarrassment and actually turn it into a pretty solid PR moment.
Wow, that's a great story.
Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Love it. All right, who's next?
I honestly was trying to think of what brand it was. I couldn't figure it out. I was doing some quick Googling on the side. I'm pretty sure it was Progressive, but I don't want to or throw them under the bus if it wasn't necessarily them. But in any case, it was a car insurance commercial. It was actually run by my former employer, Ogilvy. It's a kind of a full service agency headquartered in New York. And one of the things they were running was a spot that highlighted how severe car accidents can be, and kind of highlight how it can come out of nowhere and really kind of flip your life upside down, essentially. And the spot featured, I think it was a kid who ended up actually dying in the spot. And as you could probably imagine, the mainstream television audience wasn't quite ready for that type of sentiment. And that was something that they had to kind of walk backwards on. I think the client ended up dropping Ogilvy at the time, or there was some sort of agency review. But I think what's interesting, and to maybe highlight a potential opinion and perhaps a learning too, is like, as much as that type of content is as real as possible, sometimes when it comes to paid ads or paid media, it may not make the most sense to be as real as possible. Of course, it depends on what you want as the reaction, but if your audience is kind of like the middle of the road, I guess like the average consumer, probably not the best approach. And I think the agency and the clients honestly learned a little bit of the hard way. Perhaps could be different now. This was about, I want to say, like 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, that's a pretty heavy one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. And for me, actually, it's two. One is a little bit. So I was working in advertising before crypto, and one of the main clients for the studio that I was working for was Gap, and there was still this, when they decided to change the logo at some point a few years ago. It was a very, very bad decision. And that reminded me then a couple of years ago, actually, Zara did the same thing. So Baron & Baron, which is one of the biggest ad agencies in the world, it's based here in New York, they did a brand redesign for Zara, and which is still the current branding. They changed. They actually went the opposite way from Gap. So Gap went from this serif font to a kind of anonymous sans serif, and there was probably, if it was today, it would work because we definitely moved in that direction. But back then, it was probably too early to do something like that. And Zara did kind of the opposite. They squished the logo quite a bit. Anyway, when that came out, I remember in the fashion industry and in the advertising industry in New York, there were a lot of people that were, rolling their eyes and thinking that it wasn't that great of a move. And who knows, maybe it's relatable to some brands that we're seeing in crypto as well, right? That they decide to rebrand, but maybe it's not that successful.
Yeah, it's like breaking something that's working too early because you want to rearrange your room when it doesn't need to be. I like that. I mean, we talked a little bit about things that are impressionable and then maybe what not to do. So I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on there's a very big difference, I feel like, in that last kind of 1% of finish. And so it's like, in your guys' opinion, what separates that legendary brand, those things that made the impression on you that you remember 20, 30 years later, from something that's just really, really good. What is the delineation that they do, or what do they do differently, that makes something legendary, memorable, versus just kind of your run-of-the-mill regular brand?
Well, that's the $1 million question, right?
I got all the right people on here.
I'll take a stab.
Go for it.
Go for it.
So, I mean, the through line is always the communication and the relationship that you have with your customer. And one thing, I would open to this crowd is, how do you feel that really differed in traditional media versus in crypto? I work with a lot of different companies, and especially as they're going through launch, and maybe they hire somebody for their CMO or their marketing team. And the traditional sense is that you communicate infrequently with very strong, dominant messages. Whereas I feel like crypto is kind of the opposite. You want this transparency. Obviously, you need to maintain a narrative, but people have these very 24/7 expectations. So, every little thing that you do should become some sort of announcement that can help rally the community. But, it all does come back to this inclusivity and making people feel as though, they're part of that family. At least that's how I see it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I was thinking earlier as well, obviously the concept of this, what makes a community champion. And I think obviously this comes down to creating advocacy, and you can only do that through that trust and transparency. And I was thinking about how we engage with our community. And for me, a community champion isn't someone that just goes out and blindly shills us. It's someone who puts in the work to really understand what we're doing and also understand everything that we're not, and is asking the difficult questions and is making suggestions and improvements with you to kind of help us build. So it's non-stop. It's this continued stream, as you said, of updates, of development updates, marketing updates, biz dev updates, and having that transparency is so important. And I think as well, it's a two-way thing, because we're pretty active in our communities, and I am in particular. And I think the feedback that we gain from doing so is really unrivaled, because we're under no illusion that we have thought of absolutely everything when creating something, and the feedback that we get every time that we share a new update helps us grow. We have our community suggest new partnerships to us, feedback on improvements, new pairs to be added to the terminal. And so it's a kind of a two-way stream of communication there, of constant communication.
Would you, quick question, Timothea, would you say in terms of, I guess, like the community champion side, how do you guys like identify them and also then lift them up within your the Orion ecosystem, for example?
Well, we have, there's kind of a few layers. We have Chris, who's in the chat right now, who's one of our evangelists. We have our aviators, we have a VIP group, and I think, pretty much a lot of these people have been with us from the start and have played such a critical role in where we are today, not just through this feedback, but in managing, trade channels and educating others and fostering this sense of community. And by it kind of in doing so, we are providing them early access to new features, insight into our development before it's released to the community. So it's, they are almost an extension of us as a team, and we want to treat them as such.
Yeah, I think within the Avalanche context, and also prior to Avalanche as well, seeing a lot of those similarities. I think the challenge for, probably all of us is just really trying to figure out how best to scale, perhaps. Because I think there's a lot of criticism within the marketing context and also outside of the marketing context of kind of falsely labeling like these digital channels as quote unquote community. And I think one of the main criticisms that I always see is like, just because you have a people with shared interests in a room or in kind of a group doesn't necessarily mean it's community. And I tend to agree to a certain point, but also at the same time, it's like if you have a group of 1,000 people who are collectively trying to accomplish one goal. I think in crypto, there are clear goals, especially with with kind of tokens associated with most of these projects. And I think one of the things that a lot of decentralized projects are trying to do is truly make a two-way street. So if there's community champions within the ecosystem, or also people that have high potential to be quote unquote community champions, then how can these decentralized projects provide value to them? Maybe it's something as simple as really giving them as many of the resources and access to kind of the product discussions as often as possible, so they can be contributing and really making an impact. Or it could also be a little bit more in depth, where perhaps they're part of kind of an internal group of perhaps like a group of people who give like much more nuanced feedback, and maybe even part of non-public discussions as well. I think there's a whole spectrum. I think that's something that we're all trying to solve within our respective fields.
Yeah, definitely agreed on that. And I think content and education has been our primary focus on being able to build a community sustainably. And I think in focusing on that versus airdrops, for example, we have a community that really believes in what we're doing and aren't just around for price action. So as a result, I feel like the communities that we do have, I actually really enjoy going into them. We have like inside jokes and like fake channels that we have memes in, and it's just like, it gets silly. But when we spend so much time in these channels, both us and them, I think having that sense of engagement is important. But critically, yeah, it's arming them with the tools to help us grow our community more. So, Jay, I saw on DAOmaker's platform, are you guys also using their social mining hub?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. Cool. I feel like that's such a great tool for us because it allows them to be incentivized for the work that they're already doing, content creation, translation, and we've recently just launched a localization campaign to translate our terminal into about 20 different languages, and I feel like having this platform is a good way to give them the tools and resources all in one place.
Yeah, and I think the key there is incentive alignment also. And I think there's also critics for the social mining mechanism too. I've seen so many of those voices shine through as well. And it's like, oh well, you're paying your community off to basically like in kind of a negative phrasing would be like shill your project. And sure, that could be like one view of it, but at the end of the day, I think the way we as marketers look at it is it's part of the paid media like toolkit, I think. And if you have content that needs to be localized, for example, there's nothing wrong with incentivizing people or paying people first and foremost, of course. If people are doing the work that needs to get done, I think that actually should be the default is to be able to compensate people for their time. And a lot of times I think traditional brands don't necessarily do this because they're not as open as perhaps like blockchain enabled projects are, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it's also kind of a culture shift. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. But then I think the kicker here is if you're able to then incentivize with your platform's token, then that's also another way to distribute it in more hands. And I think that's how we're seeing the DAO Maker platform really play a pivotal role within the Avalanche community. And actually, just quickly to highlight here, for the people that don't know what the DAO Maker platform is, it's effectively, I just realized as I'm talking about it so casually, the DAO Maker platform essentially allows, I guess, so Timothea, I think if you guys use it for Orion, we use it for Avalanche. So any, mostly I think blockchain project to have like kind of micro tasks. So it can be as simple as like increasing the followers or subscription count for certain channels. So that's just a growth focused task. But then there's also like translations, and there's also something even more in depth like creating your own content. And all of this can be compensated with some sort of token allocation. So in Avalanche's case, you can earn the Avalanche native token for doing any of these tasks that are listed there.
I think also ultimately, I mean, the way that we've positioned it is rather than an incentive, it's more a reward. And I know, semantics there, but these people, for the most part, are already creating this content. They're already creating these infographics. And for us, it's a sort of sign of a token, literally, of appreciation for the work that they're doing. So, I'm sure there are obviously critics of it, but I think it's a nice tool to have in place to be able to obviously encourage this content, but also show the appreciation for it also.
I completely agree. I think it's one of the most powerful things that you can do as an ecosystem with an asset. It's kind of funny, Jay. I would think that's maybe the naysayers are coming from a traditional space where money is such a stark differential from the underlying product, whereas obviously in the Internet of Value and Web3, the product and the financial upside are obviously, well, way blurrier. But I think one of the biggest resources that you have, especially as a small team starting out, trying to cover a 24/7 global marketplace that goes across a variety of language barriers. The thing, that's why we have these treasuries, right? And it's not that you're paying off people, and I could see how that would be an interesting, like, sort of negative point of view. But when you look at it as a community, you have people that now. One of the coolest things to me about all of this is that when you get a community revved up and there is a capacity to contribute and earn for that, we start to move away from the 9-to-5 model of the Industrial Revolution. And I think that's a really big component of the entire step forward that we're taking in crypto as a culture and society as large. But I recommend to my tiny, smaller teams all the time, find these people. Again, this is what I think the community champion is: the people that show up, the people that do put in some efforts, and do reward them with some assets. And of course, if they get on board and they become really in your corner, again, championed, they're going to want to hold these bags, and they're going to want to continue to work. And that's kind of the network that you need to build if you're ever going to move this thing to a truly decentralized world, where they have to have that ownership stake in order to keep coming. And every now and then I come into a Discord and there's some massive Q&A session around an update, and it's mostly users that are answering other users, and that kind of thing is just fascinating to me. And I think that's what really allows us to give equal opportunity to a 17-year-old in Vietnam, as well as some 30-year-old programmer in the States. Everybody that wants to come in and do good work is capable of doing it.
This is a great discussion because it's, like what you're just touching on, Graham, like the democratization of opportunity, right? And when you think about, Timothea, what your process there was, like, you were gonna pay someone to do localization anyway, right? You potentially, depending on where you are in the life cycle of your business, you might do paid advertising, right? And so it's like it was just all happening in one place, and lo and behold, you get to incentivize this person so that they can be a part of your community, right? Like it's when you think about it, it's just all of the things in one place, and it's just efficiency, and it's just the traditional world, I think, just does not understand this way of marketing yet, and it's kind of coming off with the word community, but and that's what it is, because you're bringing them into this community, and everyone has different skill sets, and you're incentivizing them. It's like, what if Nike could just give away quote unquote stock or some sort of vested interest in what they're doing to any like contractor or consultant that would come in to help the business? It's like, well, yeah, like why wouldn't you do that if you could? And so it's just the tokenization of everything, and the world that we're moving into allows brands and people to make that happen.
Yeah, and as you said, we would have paid someone to do this, and why not pay the community instead? And I think with beyond terminal translation, obviously a translation task is a simple, a simple translation, but things like infographics, our proposition is complex at times. So having an external designer try to comprehend in a short amount of time exactly what we're doing and articulate it very clearly. Instead, that learning curve is it doesn't have to be there, because our community already understand how this works and can create content that can then bring other people on board too.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. Because when commissioning external people to deal with crypto stuff, it's always challenging. It takes way longer than it should, because they have to learn about things, and definitely hiring from the community or commissioning community members to do certain tasks, as you guys are doing with DAOmaker. It certainly is a good way of doing things. I do believe that we're still early with social mining and incentivized tasks, so to speak. I know I'm not going to say anything more, but a couple of people in this room know about something that will be very nice for all this. But in general, I'm excited where we're going, because no matter what, we're still very early in all this, and we're all still kind of figuring things out, because as you guys have pointed out so far, this is a new thing for everyone. Nobody had to deal with 24/7 365 days a year active people, active users that chat all the time and they talk all the time. It's never been like this in any other industry that I know of. So definitely, we have to adapt to these new mechanics, and also probably the tools that are available right now. There's still not fully 100% suited for this type of community. But yeah, as you guys pointed out, I would say that there are two main things that kind of emerge from this. One is the concept of organization, and because what DAOmaker does, and what also communities and either open or closed groups do, is actually to organize people. There's this beautiful essay. I believe actually Jay Gun shared it a few months ago, or maybe last year, on Twitter, and I really recommend everyone to read it. It's called The Tyranny of Structurelessness. I'll make a very, very brief summary of it. It was written in the 70s, I believe, during the feminist movement, and the bottom line is that there's no such thing as a structureless group or community. There's always some sort of structure, and the structure is either informal, and so it's kind of creates by itself, and oftentimes it's not ideal, because if basically the person that screams the loudest, then he or she gets heard, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right person to lead a community or a group. Whereas, if you actually structure a community, however you want to structure it, but if there's a sort of structure in place, and can be organic, but with certain limits, then for sure you're going to have a very, very focused output and very focused group of people that work together. So I would say that's something that is super, super important. So the organization, and also the other one is, I will share what really made the difference for us at Fantom. Of course, communicating as much as possible, being part of the community for sure. So before joining Fantom full time, I was part of the community. I saw Fantom since before the public sale, so I was always there. And before joining the team, I was part of the community, and I started creating myself group with other people. And I kept in touch with them. So we're talking, 3 years ago now. So, and there are people that stuck around. Some people left, but those that are still around are super hardcore. Not just fans, but they really believe in what we're doing, and they try to contribute as much as they can. And so this brings me to what really worked for Fantom, and this is probably a few months ago, at the beginning of the year. A few of the very, very core community members formed a Telegram group, and it's still a private group. It's about 100 people right now. It's called the Kings, and these guys, once they got organized, they basically became a war machine. And you can clearly see it's in the numbers. Numbers don't lie. You go back in January, and you see the engagement on Twitter, and the buzz around Fantom on Twitter back in January. In a week time, it exploded, and I can tell you 100% that this was thanks to that specific group that organized themselves, and they were like, okay, yes, when marketing, that's a common sentence in crypto, and they realize that they can do their share of work in a way. And as Timothea, you were saying before, the community really, in that case, became an extension of the team. So yeah, absolutely.
Simone, were these influencers? Were these just people in the Fantom community? I mean, what exactly was happening in this group? Was it kind of like a social sharing group? Like, what was going down there?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, none of them were influencers. Most of them didn't even have a Twitter account. They created it right after, like, okay, guys, let's do this. And yeah, the majority didn't have a Twitter account. They created it. One of them actually is Atakan. This guy is actually from Turkey, and his Twitter handle is Intro to DeFi, and now has I don't know, for sure more than 1,000 followers, maybe even more. So a few of these guys, they really they managed to create to grow their following also in just a few months, and just because they wanted to sort of amplify what we were doing at Fantom. So what they did specifically, it's either mass, whenever we were tweeting something, either as a foundation or anyone in the Fantom team, they would literally jump on it, and then retweet, comment, and like, just all those things that start that Twitter likes. And then after that, they kept going. So they just started creating content on themselves. So they kept doing the same thing, but instead of just sharing and liking the foundation tweets, they were doing the same with their own tweets. So at the point you have 100, maybe not 100 people creating tweets every day, but a good amount of them. One of them is Daniel that tweets 24/7. And then from there, they evolved. They started writing Medium articles. Some of them are doing videos, and so it's really there's so something beautiful happens when all these things come together, and when you allow the community to really to express themselves, and it's empowerment. So they really, as I said, the community becomes an extension of the project, and from passive they become active. And so yeah, it was really, I would say, it was the magic sauce in part of the success of Fantom in the past few months.
The community within the community.
Absolutely. That's super important because as maybe Jay, you were mentioning that what happens when a community becomes too big, that's very, very hard to manage. I mean, yes, you can do it. Of course, all of us have big communities at this point. You have community managers, and you answer people questions, but a lot of good quality talk kind of gets lost because it's too many people, and there's the new member that jumps in and say, hey, where with random question. So when you have communities of thousands of people, it's kind of hard to have focused conversations. We got a little bit better for us with using Discord, but also introduced a little bit of a barrier because not many, most of the users are not on Discord. And so really creating a community within a community that then could also function as a funnel, because I'm in the group as well specifically, and I talk to them daily. We became so close that they can, if they message me, DM me, I will always answer, always get back to them. And actually, I got a really good idea from them. We created another group that is for UX research. So I mean, all sorts of really, really good things happen once you have a very, very dedicated and reasonably small group of people working together.
Does anyone else have this kind of super group or kind of core group of community members that are almost kind of like the group that teach the teacher type people?
Yeah, I think we all probably have that experience within our respective fields. I think specific to Avalanche, one of the fascinating things is pretty much personally I've been around since the beginning of the community channels, especially with Telegram. And what you're seeing initially is kind of the first batch of people come into those channels and basically start promoting the project as if they were part of the team, which is something that I don't really see that often with non-crypto brands. But one of the things that continues to stay true is you have kind of the main channel that continues to grow and scale, but then you also have more specific channels that then end up maybe not spinning off is not the right term, but just kind of creating another more focused area for discussion. So I think Discord was an early kind of channel that ended up doing that. I think at this point, at least within the Avalanche context, Discord has, I think, around 12 to 13K users at this point. So also not as specific, but it of course has the channel structure. So it makes it for a little bit easier management. But then you also have very specific or subsets of the Avalanche community, if you will. So you have, right now I'm actually looking at Telegram, you have DeFi Avalanche. That's completely community run. I'm in that just to talk to people directly. And some people have a lot of things to say, really good things, but also really, really bad things. And I think the thing that I always try not to take for granted are those really natural and organic conversations, because that's what actually gets you the truest feedback, I think. And so I think last week it was like super late, and I'm based in New York, just for the context of the group here, but I think it was like past midnight, and someone was talking about a new automated market maker dApp that launched on Avalanche. And I think for me, I was like, oh, that's awesome. What makes you so excited about this? I remember asking those kind of like emotional questions, like how did you catch wind of this? Why do you think this will be the most successful project within the space? And you really kind of get in-depth kind of insights as to what people are thinking. Now, I think the challenge, at least for me and our team, is really trying to make those insights as actionable as possible without falling into the trap of it all, or not all, but with each one being anecdotal. So is there a way to aggregate all that sentiment? I think social sentiment and those types of tools that exist in the non-Telegram space exist, but aren't necessarily perfect. And I think maybe, Joe, that's what you guys are solving or trying to solve at LunarCrush, where you're really trying to get the social data and see how you can make that actionable, but then also making sure that you're not just every single other social listening tool where it's a little bit too broad once you really start diving deep into what's going on with the data set.
Yeah, I mean, for us looking at the entire market, and it's, that's why, there's 8,000 tokens out there. We carry roughly 2,000, and it's because, we're not just grabbing, the next thing that came out and now it's got a price and we can list it here and what's the outstanding supply and a couple of things that are public, for us. And it's why I think we've been pretty fortunate and successful is that, the first thing that we did at LunarCrush was go and try and organize, the data and try to really identify, it was something that you couldn't code out. It's like we still are adding each project by hand, because it's very nuanced with the data that you collect, try and understand something. And, it's like thinking about, any projects that are thinking about starting something new, like please do not name like your project like bread token, right? Or something where it's like, Fakasha is going to get picked up on Google search, or like some news article that's posted out there, and it's a very difficult and nuanced thing to try and understand, which projects are growing a community and which ones aren't. And some people don't have, community members that are as vocal and out there, and they, they might have amazing tech and they might be solving, and finding a cure to cancer. But if, you have a birthday party at your house and you don't tell anyone about it, no one's coming. Doesn't matter how many clowns you have. And so, it's all about, kind of understanding, the market as a whole and your share of voice across all of crypto. And I know, it's like, this is probably the deepest I've gotten into a conversation over the last 4 weeks, and we haven't mentioned Dogecoin, but, it's the first kind of brand out there that's, it's proliferated and they've created this kind of insane community. And, it's like you can't cut the head off of it because no one's number one. It's everyone's number three. And it's just interesting to kind of see the market shifting in these directions. And, thank God crypto is open and free, and, the market will take care of it in the right manner. But I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned about, the way that happened for people, and to understand that, we were looking at days where, Doge, I mean, and still even this week, surpassed Bitcoin many days in mentions, and that's never happened before. And so to see that happen was pretty interesting, and it's bringing in this, and all of us have been in this space for a while, but I was joining some of these Twitter spaces over the last couple of weeks, and I mean, these are folks this is their first investment, right? And I think we all thought, well, how do people get into crypto? Well, maybe you buy a little Bitcoin and maybe you get a wallet somewhere, and then maybe you start to understand the rest of these projects that are out there. But lo and behold, this is kind of like it's the same thing as like, what Pokemon Go did for AR, where people kind of realized like, oh, I can like hold my phone up and there's these real things out there now. Granted, I wish this Doge thing happened more like on a DEX, and people understood what a wallet address was and how to transfer stuff, and they made some money on Doge and hopefully moved it away and then started staking it somewhere, started understanding liquidity pools and everything else. But it happened on Robinhood and a couple other places. But I think at the end of the day, it's a good thing because even if 1 or 2% of those people ends up building, the project of the future, that's good for all of us on a whole.
Absolutely. It's funny that the Doge conversation, I get a lot of new clients looking to build, token projects. And I would say one of the most common things I'm hearing now is older people with existing companies are like, we think we can make a token because of Doge. And my answer is always, yeah, but that's got a massive community behind it. There's, it's so interesting because the network effect is very difficult to get. In many ways, Doge could potentially have a technology that pivots to catch up with the network. I don't know, but it's quite fascinating.
So I think we actually just did a quick time check, maybe out of time, so maybe a good place to end it now. I'm not sure, Joe, if you had any closing icebreakers, I guess, or I don't know what you would call those.
You know what? I did have one, and this is always a fun one. And you got like two of you guys kind of almost already answered it with the creepy callers and the Beanie Babies, but my other fun one was just is always, did you collect anything as a child, and if so, what do you think it says about your personality today? And for me, it was baseball cards and like those mini baseball bats that you get. So whenever I'd go to a stadium, I would always get those. And the collectible thing has been fun, because it's like NFTs. I think are kind of similar to that of, I think it's like if you didn't collect something, you kind of don't understand like the uniqueness of like an NFT. But it's like if you had collected something, you understand, you understand that this thing is mine and I could, I'm holding it and there's a market to it it's more fun than, it's like, oh, I'm trading Berkshire Hathaway. This is so exciting. Yay. Right? Like it's not, but it's like when if you've got an NFT that's interesting and it's colorful and or a baseball card that might have like an imperfection on it, you're searching for that thing. It's like you're searching for something different. It's like every share of Berkshire Hathaway is the exact same, and that's not fun. So I don't know. I think it's fun to hear, if anyone ever collected anything, and what do you think it says about who you are and what you've turned into?
Yeah, what's funny is I also collected baseball cards as well, but I actually don't like the MLB at all, or the sport.
See,
to be honest,
says
funny
something.
Enough. Yeah, right. I don't know. Maybe I think I was just trying to blend in. I don't know. I think it was a very standard thing to be collecting, but I did get into it pretty deeply, and I think the tie that you made with NFTs is exactly right. Like if you collected something in your past life, you do understand the value of scarcity, or at least the illusion of scarcity in the case of real world assets, because you can't really prove it. I think at least with like baseball cards, for example, unless you just trust like Topps or one of the other major baseball card companies. I think the interesting thing that I ended up getting into, I don't know if you got into this, Joe, but I started, my ethnic background is both my parents are Japanese, and I also ended up collecting Japanese baseball cards. So I ended up doing both American and Japanese leagues.
Super cool.
Yeah.
I collected Pokemon cards, and I can just picture the day that I left my Mewtwo card in the back of a rental car, and I can only equate that to losing my seed phrases today.
Oh yeah, that's tragic.
Just burned into your memory.
Yeah.
Well, and of course, Pokemon cards came back with a fiery passion. I also collected Pokemon cards, a variety of Magic cards, Beanie Babies, all sorts of things. Big collector here. I think we probably all have that through line.
Nice. And I mean, I collected a bunch of things. Most memorable probably a bunch of comics, a few of them quite rare. I remember there's this Italian comic is called Ratman, and they came out with some limited edition, and I bought two of those, two copies of that, and one is still, I wrapped it up with, the plastic thing, and it's still on my shelf back in my room in Italy, and I bought it, I don't know, 20 plus years ago. So one to read it, and the other one to keep it there, and all part of a much bigger collection.
Very cool.
Awesome. Alrighty. Well, just to close the closing line here, this has been an awesome discussion with very, very accomplished people in the space. I think this goes without saying, but you will see a lot coming from each and every one of us, and I'm sure we'll be doing more of these more often. As a reminder, this will be uploaded on YouTube, so we'll also just share that out as far and wide as possible. And if there are any questions after the fact, please shoot any of us a note, and we'll be happy to answer them. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having us, Jay.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Bye-bye.
Cheers.